Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The Gifted. So a lot of things were done in this episode, so let's break everything down. So basically, it's been 6 months since season one's finale. And what's kind of interesting is we end up finding out that very quickly, I guess we're getting introduced to potentially the main antagonist of this season, Reva, who has kind of taken over the Hellfire Club in particular. I don't know how you just seamlessly do that. I mean, she took out like the main council of it, kind of the inner circle, ended up killing them, which is so interesting because William was kind of set up last season, and it's just like, oh yeah, that character, yeah. Immediately this season we killed him off. It's kind of interesting. I mean, to be fair, technically the beginning of this episode is still taking place relatively soon after season one's events, because he was kind of pissed at what she did, getting Lorna like he did and Andy. It's like she made moves that shouldn't have been made. And I love him referring to the Frost sisters as her pets. And so it's really hard to say what her power is, in particular Reva's. I would assume it's kind of like a sonic scream ability, because it seemed like it paralyzed everyone because of the sound and everything. Long enough for Frost to go in and put a bullet in everybody. But that's the thing. Like, how do you just grab control of an organization like that without much question? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Like, I guess they're the tops of the organization, so it's like, she always had this seat there anyway, and now I guess it's just like all the power kind of falls on her, because for, I guess, because it's kind of interesting, because the Hellfire Club, we kind of see it later on, has their own vision. That is ultimately comes down to the whole situation, the X-Men versus the Brotherhood, like having difference of opinions on how things should be handled. In all honesty, they kind of all want the same thing in certain different regards, but they just kind of go about it a very different way, because the Brotherhood is all about kind of using force by any means. They kind of put mutant lives above anyone else's, whereas the X-Men strive to kind of like bring a balance, try to unite both worlds. So a world where mutants can feel safe but also live in harmony with humans is kind of their goal. So you see the Hellfire Club seem like it's kind of their goal, but it's definitely more so on the front of like, no, we got to make sure mutants are taken care of first, because they basically want to create a world where where mutants can have peace of mind and everything. And for that goal, Reva is willing to do anything. As we can see, she's willing to kill those guys. Because even Lorna kind of brings it up later on. It's kind of like, oh, you need me? But you've needed people before me, haven't you? Kind of referencing what she had heard rumors about the inner circle. Because it's like, you killed them off and you needed them until you didn't. And she's like, how am I so sure I'm going to be so different? To be fair, like, we haven't gotten into it, but, it got brought up last season. Like, yeah, her dad's a pretty big player in everything. So being as powerful as she is, and probably her lineage when it comes to the Hellfire Club is more so, it's probably not even a lineage thing, it's more so just being the powerful mutant that she is, that she's needed for whatever it is. Reva, like, you never know with her and the Frost sisters, because like there you've got their own thing going on, because they implanted in Lorna later on, because obviously I'm skipping around, but when she's giving birth, like to kind of get her over that mental block, because the main mental block that was holding her back was the fact is that Marcos wasn't there, because she thought she'd be surrounded by family, but it's kind of like, hey, you've got us and everything. So, but they showed her a vision of like, oh man, this is the future we planning for your daughter as well as for you and all mutant kind. To be fair, it's the Frost sisters too anyway. That doesn't mean that's necessarily what they 100% have in mind, but that's enough to probably get Lorna on their side long enough to keep doing whatever they need. Because the fact of the matter is, like I said, like, it comes from the Brotherhood. Like, I doubt things are going to be as smoothly as that. Because to me, when I think the Brotherhood, and maybe this is wrong of me, this is also coming from someone who's never read the comics, so maybe for me, I kind of feel like it's more so a situation of like, nah, it's going to be kind of like a huge mass takeover is kind of what their goal is. But maybe that's kind of like the vision she showed them was kind of reading in between the lines of that circumstance. But nevertheless, all I'm saying is you can't really trust that whole situation. Because even Lorna wasn't 100% about trusting them. Because even she's like, yeah, they're going to pick me over my baby just in case something happens. So Andy, I want you to protect my baby. Even if it means you fighting them. Which, it didn't go down this episode, but that probably is foreshadowing some stuff much later on where Andy will have to do that. Protect Lorna's baby. Try to probably get it away from the Hellfire Club. Potentially, I don't know. An interesting thing that kind of came up in this episode that I thought was kind of interesting is the fact is that the Hellfire Club is very well funded, which is interesting considering like the Mutant Underground is completely not that at all. So it's like, where do you get your funding? I guess a lot of it is kind of like legitimate business that's all kind of being like funneled to. Well, I mean, a lot of their money is tied up in offshore accounts and stuff like that. But it's like, where do you get the money in the first place? Like I said, maybe by legal means, maybe illegal means. It's hard to say. And speaking of the Mutant Underground, we see that basically Marcos and Caitlin are kind of at the end of their ropes because they're trying to do whatever they can to find, Andy and Lorna respectively. And it's just like they're willing to deal with whoever they have to, even if it means turning to a bad guy like the Wire, who literally tried to rob them. Caitlin ended up getting shot in the process, but we see her training with John has paid off because she was able to handle herself pretty well. And I love that literally her last message to him, having the gun pointed at him, was like, don't do drugs. I guess that motherly instinct kicking in and stuff like that. But for him, it's just like he doesn't want to get mixed up with his group because he knows whatever they got planned, he doesn't want to know anything about it because they have a tendency of making people disappear. We see they kind of did that themselves with the Inner Circle, but who's to say who else they did that with? Another interesting thing that maybe they brought this up in the season 1 finale, but I didn't remember it being brought up. I feel like this might be the first instance of them bringing it up, but maybe they did, and I'm just not remembering correctly. But like the whole aspect of what went down in Atlanta, like basically with the Mutant Underground, like everyone thinks they're dead. And I was like, oh, right. Because I kept thinking they were like, what went down in Atlanta? I was like, what went down in Atlanta? Oh, yeah, right. Because Andy and Lauren did their thing. And so everyone kind of thinks they're dead. I mean, aside from the Hellfire Club knows they're not. But obviously they're going to keep each other's secret that they're alive just because they don't want, Sentinel Services interference. But for now, it's just a situation of like, they're kind of hiding underneath the radar. Everyone's using fake IDs, like trying to do their best to keep the Mutant Underground running. But things were already pretty tough before, but things are even worse now because after everything that went down last season, like everything's kind of stepped up because even Lauren, her and Clarissa are talking about it. Like this is the 3rd raid this month in the episode. So it's kind of like things are kind of picking up. There's kind of no... Because it seemed like they killed the girls, Christina and Jasmine. It seemed like their parents were killed almost for nothing. It's not like they were actually doing anything. So that's kind of a sad situation. But they're trying to do what they can. It almost feels like it's a losing battle, but they're trying to take the small victories. But everyone else is just kind of broken down. Like I said, Caitlin and Marcos feeling the way that they do. There's even a whole situation with Lauren having her dream, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was something I didn't think about until, like, I was like, oh yeah, they're twin connection. And then Caitlin kind of specifically talked about, it's like, right, when their powers are joined together, they can literally see through each other's eyes. So maybe that, because like the fact is she talked about it being a dream, but it's like, she saw what Andy looked like now, even though she hasn't seen him in the past 6 months. So it's like, yeah, that twin connection is definitely strong in that regard. It's probably even stronger because of them being mutants and them having that connection with their whole abilities and stuff like that. It makes you wonder, does that work on the reverse? Because we didn't see it with Andy. We saw it with Lauren, but not Andy. So, but what she saw in the dream, and it made it kind of a nightmare, is the fact is that Andy was kind of like, no, this is who we are, and grabbing her head and won't let go, and is like using their power, potentially for destruction. So I'm assuming, once again, that's kind of another foreshadowing thing. But that in itself is a big debate, because obviously you can tell Lauren kind of tried to avoid, like there was a conversation going down between Reed and Caitlin about that whole situation. She's kind of like, it's because he wants her to kind of have some semblance of a normal life of like, hey, you need to have friends your own age. And she's like, no. Oh, and Caitlin's like, oh, so the whole thing for Andy isn't important? Like, that's not top priority? He's like, no, it's not. And she's like, no, I'll stay where I am. I want to be alone right now. Because, things have kind of been hard on the family in general. And I think... because Reed is understandable, because it's like he doesn't want like Lauren to like let this kind of be all that defines her. He wants there to be more for her other than this. But Caitlin's like, in her side, you can understand too, because it's like our family isn't whole. Why are we doing that? But at the same time, it's something Lauren brings up later on. It's like, Mom, you act like Andy was kidnapped. He left of his own choice. Him and Lauren are both left. The war came to them and they made their choices. So we can't be spending so much time worried about them. But even when it was all said and done, even you could tell, like, when it was like, oh, we're potentially catching up with Andy and Lauren, like, there's a side of her that was almost happy, but it's just kind of like the disappointment hitting all of them all over again, because it's just like they were so close yet they felt so far away, especially, because it's like, especially because for Marcos, it's like he knows that she's giving birth to their child, and he can't be there. He can't be there for either one of them, and it's the most frustrating thing because once again, kind of showing you how powerful Lorna is, and the whole the pregnancy kind of made her powers kind of go a little haywire, made her a little stronger than what she was before. Makes you wonder, will she keep that power boost? Because her powers reached super far. She basically knocked down the power grid, because like it was basically messing with electricity and lights all across the city, and once it ended up bringing down the power grid, so they couldn't track them anymore. So, you know, I honestly can say I think the only people that are currently in this situation are probably 100% happy. Probably John and Clarissa, just because of the bond between them and everything. Like, they're the only ones kind of have their own little happy ending in all of this. Which is interesting, too. There was that moment between him and Clarissa where she's talking about the fact is, and I thought it was kind of fascinating. I guess her eyes are tied to her abilities, because basically when she opens up portals and stuff like that, I guess she can see the energy in the air. Like, she needs to actually see it before she can, like, grab it and just kind of form it into a portal. Because the moment she puts in contact, she can't see it. Which John's kind of like, oh, shouldn't you learn how to kind of work around that? And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't know, like, your eye, like, I mean, like, I should have figured as much, because like, when you becoming a mutant, your eyes being a part of her whole chain. So it's like, of course that would feed into your ability. Because I don't think that was really referenced at all in season 1. I was just kind of like, I didn't really think too much on it, but now it's kind of like pointing out, it's like, no, there's a reason why her eyes are the way it does, or because it kind of helps with her ability situation. Also, and since I'm speaking about that whole mutant thing, it's kind of interesting, because at least I'm noticing this was the first episode. I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing for the rest of the season. But in season 1, all the episode titles are pronounced by a giant X somewhere in the word of the title of the episode. This season, it seems like it's M, which could stand for many things. I'm assuming it has something to do with, like, it could be just mutant in general, the X being the X gene, or maybe that could just be like X-Men, but I'm assuming the M could be mutant, but I'm also thinking like House of M. Do not ask me what that is. I know it's a thing in the Marvel comic books. What that is exactly, I have no idea. But it's definitely a Marvel thing, so maybe that's what that's supposed to be. It could be either or. Maybe that's kind of the whole point too. It's kind of like it could be anything. So there's also that plot with the sisters Jasmine and Christina, like Christina looking for her little sister Jasmine. She was picked up by somebody, so we don't know it doesn't seem like it's Sentinel servers. It does seem like, okay, maybe it's some of their other people. It's just kind of something that was kind of happening in the background. I mean, not necessarily background, it's kind of in the foreground, but I'm kind of curious to see whether that kind of turns into something or not. Because at the very least, amongst the main squad, their forces are kind of low. Because, I mean, to be fair, it's probably like they're divided all over the place. It probably isn't just a simple fact. Because, like, though that group is, like, there, but all the other mutants that stay behind at the end of season 1 are all somewhere else helping in their own way. So they're probably trying not to all be in one located area, just in case anything happens. It's like the rest of the group is fine, because before, remember, they were all in one group area with the mutant underground, so that kind of put them in a disadvantageous situation. So I'm curious to see, is that why they're doing what they're doing. Another interesting development that came up this episode too, and it kind of gets teased a little bit, it seems like whatever it is that Otto did to Reed when he was younger, it seems like it's wearing off, because it seems like the mutant gene in his body is starting to kick in. Like, was what Otto did to him not permanent, or they're extenuating circumstances? Like, I mean, I'm sure, the X gene in general and the mutant powers are typically associated with emotion, and everything they've kind of been through for the past while, losing Andy and just the stress of everything is probably just, because it seemed like it really kicked in the moment he found out, like, Caitlyn was shot. It just, like, he's been fighting it, and it's something he brings up to Caitlyn, is like, because we're so focused on this Andy thing, we've kind of let other things kind of slide by. So it seems like he's probably been dealing with this for a while, and he's just kind of been burying it. Like, he's been having these headaches, but I think what happened in this episode was probably the most pronounced it's ever been, where it's like what happened with his hand. So it seems like his mutant abilities are starting to kick in after all these years. So I'm assuming they'll be going to be something like his father's, because like I said, I mean, to be fair, you never know, because abilities in this kind of seem like they skip a generation, because Andy and Lauren gained their powers from their grandfather and great aunt. So it's kind of like, well, not grand. she'd be considered a great aunt, wouldn't I be? Nevertheless, not the point, you know? So, but I'm assuming because the way his hand looked and everything, like, his dad's power was kind of like fireballish, so I was kind of like, well, or at least like energy ballish, so I'm wondering, is that what it is? Or maybe he has a completely different ability too. It's always interesting how the mutant abilities can work, because some are a lot more genetic. I guess because it's like a mixture of different things, and I guess, you know, the mutant gene presents itself to people in different ways, hence why, like, I mean, who knows, maybe it has something to do with what Otto did, because what he did to Reed, by the time Reed had the kids, the mutant gene in him specifically that he got from Otto was kind of a little, well, mutated in itself, so the more probably dominant gene of the previous twins in the family translated over to Lauren and Andy, or maybe it's just because they are twins. You know, it's hard to say like how that works. So I'm very interested to see what that ends up being, because he was about to tell Caitlin in this episode, but then everything about Lorna and the baby came up. So it's like, oh, Omer was close to getting Andy, but nope. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what that ultimately ends up being. But I'm very interested to see what they do with this season. Obviously there's that prolific divide, like I said last season, of the X-Men versus the Brotherhood now being manifested as the Mutant Underground versus the Hellfire Club, but also what this means going forward with the whole Andy situation and Lorna and Dawn, as she named her child. So where this all goes, like what the Hellfire Club has planned, what's going to happen with the Mutant Underground, what's going to happen with Reed, Lauren, and Caitlin as they deal with this whole situation. Will they be able to get Andy? Will Andy decide to come back? Like Lauren said, it's like he made his choice, because she said, I know him better than any of you can even imagine, and he's not coming back. He left us. Well, not necessarily he's not coming back, but he left us, meaning like he might not have any intentions of coming back. So, like I said, I'm very interested to see what the rest of this season has in store for us, but in particular, what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.